Put your hands together and welcome to the stage, Alistair.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Hi, welcome, good morning. This is pretty awesome. Thank you all for being here. This is probably the biggest screen I've ever presented on. It's like a Jumbotron, and that's probably the biggest my picture has ever been. This is me, I'm Alistair. Henry is the name of my son, not to get confused with who I am. And as Michelle said, I am a creative strategist at Facebook. We are a team of about 30 or 40 people around the world, and we are basically on hand to work with the kind of top-tier brand partners to Facebook to help them kind of really understand the platform, what the opportunity is, how people actually use the site, and how to kind of go about getting the most out of that for whatever your brand objectives are. Wrong way. Quick bit about Facebook. So a couple of stats just to tee us up. Kind of 1 in 5 minutes online is spent on Facebook. 50% of the UK mobile internet traffic is spent on Facebook. And 26% of all time spent on mobile apps is on Facebook and Instagram. And so these headlines aren't necessarily new, but what we really focus on is that's fantastic, but what are people actually doing? What are people spending their time doing? How are they using the site, the services, kind of so what? And this is what they're doing. It's a bit of a rubbishy screenshot of my mobile phone, apologies. But if you think about what people are spending their time doing, they're on their phones, they're scrolling through their newsfeed. They're looking at what their friends are doing, what the people they're connected to are doing, what the brands they are connected to and care about are doing. And the vast majority of time is spent kind of looking at the screen, scrolling through, and kind of consuming content within newsfeed. And you think about how people are doing that, how quickly they're doing that, you have kind of a very short, limited amount of time to kind of get in front of them. So this isn't necessarily about the latest whiz-bang app. People aren't spending their time on your marketing applications because they love your brand so much. They're spending their time on their phone and their newsfeed where their friends and family and the stuff that's going on in their lives is flowing through. So when we talk to brands and we think about what the opportunity is, it's not necessarily to drive people away from that experience to this other deep, rich, immersive brand experience. It's about how we can kind of be in newsfeed, how we can create relevancy, how we can create cut-through, how we can add value to people's lives in the space where they're spending their time in the context of what's going on and what's flowing through their newsfeed. This is Rashad. He's the head of strategy innovation at Viviki, one of the big global media companies. And he talks about the future not belonging in the containers of the past. And this is something that we, again, come across time and time again, is whenever there's a new medium, people try and apply the techniques that worked previously to the new medium. So whether that's the first TV ads just being a brand logo and kind of a radio ad played in the background, to people taking what they perceive to have worked on digital channels to Facebook. We think that's not necessarily the right approach. Don't just try and replicate homepage takeovers or banner advertising or rich media in this new medium. It won't work. So whilst things are new, some things are very much the same. This is about not forgetting the fundamentals of building great brands. So reach, frequency, relevancy, all these same things that we've kind of done as marketeers for decades and decades still apply. It's just the landscape has changed slightly. So we shouldn't necessarily jump to or forget about what we know works and what we know creates value in terms of brand and the kind of equity we're building in brands. However, some things are very different. And the key point of differentiation, I think, on Facebook is that I'm there, my friends are there, and how we interact and how we engage on the site very much starts to form who we are, who we want to be seen as, and our identity online. So previously we had kind of what we called the anonymous web, where you could be and whoever you wanted to be online. Now through things like Facebook, where you have a kind of a real identity that you create and you craft, and it's an expression out to the world of who you are, who you want to be seen as, how you engage with brands helps start to form what this identity is. And again, the point of difference is when you do that, when you connect with something, it then transmits onto your friends. And so your friends are kind of there for the ride as well. And this dynamic starts to change a lot of things in terms of how we approach building brands on Facebook. So that's all very nice, but so what? What does that mean to me? Social isn't an objective. Social is a means to an end. Kind of ultimately selling stuff is the objective. Ultimately shifting people's perceptions of your brand, how people consider your brand, how people, what feelings they take out from your brand are kind of the things that we should be looking to measure from doing this activity. Facebook metrics on their own don't necessarily tell you that. They're kind of, again, a means to an end. So just trying to get as many likes or as many fans isn't necessarily the right objective. It's a step towards something else. So let's, again, back to the fundamentals of building brands. Let's not forget about that just because we're on social media and it's a new, fun platform. So you start off with having a clear purpose. So every brand we talk to, it's like, why are you even here? Why are you on Facebook? What are you bringing? What is this doing for your brand? Nice example is Nike. I'll try not to use too many Nike examples because everyone rolls their eyes a little bit. But the same as Nike do at their events, the same as they do on their TV ads, the same as they do on their in-store experience, everything Nike do is about inspiring athletes to be better. And that's exactly the same purpose they use on Facebook. Facebook is a new way to connect with athletes, and by athletes they mean anyone who can breathe, effectively. But how can they bring that purpose to life through this new channel? And that's the starting point. So you don't get distracted by doing things that don't end up being relevant. They don't talk about how nice the weather is. They don't talk about kittens. They talk about inspiring athletes to be better. Be authentic. This is absolutely vital for the audience you guys are talking to. So the youth audience is doing all that stuff we just talked about on their mobile phones, interacting with content. Just the dials are massively turned up. And their ability to sniff out bullshit is massively turned up. So you have to be authentic because they'll find out and call you out really, really quickly. The example I think is quite nice here is John Green. Don't know if you know, he's a New York Times young author on the bestseller list. And he embraces the channel both on Twitter and Facebook and really jumps in, answers everyone's questions, talks to people. He is himself. He'll basically answer any question you have. And so the fans of his, the people that read his books, love that they can talk to him about characters, talk to him about storylines, talk to him about him. And it's a completely open and transparent and authentic experience. And again, this is how we should think about if we're going to jump into this space and embrace it, we need to kind of be authentic. We need to kind of make sure that we're not trying to deceive the audience or the customers. Brands need to define their voice, who they are, how they speak, how they communicate through their page on Facebook. Here's two quite different examples of how people are approaching that. People either talk through an actual person. So in Axe's example, it's a community manager. So they sign off via someone. Here it's Rocky, I think. Again, it means it's authentic and transparent, and you know you're talking to an individual and a person. You can respond to them and you can have a dialogue with someone representing the brand. Here is Mayhem. It's probably not necessarily massively relevant for a youth audience because Mayhem is coming from an insurance firm in the US. So again, we kind of have brands coming to us saying, I'm an insurance firm, how can I kind of create relevancy on Facebook? They've created a whole campaign around Mayhem. You may have seen it, you may not have seen it. But Mayhem is basically a character who represents when everything can go wrong. And so he's constantly talking about how you can mess up your day, how you can mess up your life, obviously with the implied understanding that you'll need insurance to protect yourself. But a really nice way of crafting a character and really clearly defining the tone of voice they don't suddenly show on their page an offer on insurance rates. It's all about the character, all about the brand. It's consistent. And we talk to lots of brands about if people are spending time scrolling through newsfeed, consuming content from their friends and family, yada, yada, yada. If they see a post from you, from your page, if you covered up the logo, covered up any branding, they'd instantly know it's from you. And again, the same care and attention and craft that goes into all our other advertising media channels should be applied here in terms of beautiful, concise copy and really strong art direction is what works really, really well. And considered consistent tone of voice so people start to build up a relationship with the brand. The way relationships work on Facebook is through many small interactions. So if you think about your friends, the people you're closest to on Facebook, you have little conversations, and they're often banal, often fairly meaningless, but over a long period of time, they build up into something really profound and meaningful. And the same applies to kind of brands and how people have a relationship with brands. It's not necessarily they'll suddenly love your brand because they spend 10 minutes in this kind of immersive world. But if you're there adding a little bit to their day, kind of adding to the conversation over a long period of time, that's how people's perceptions and opinions start to shift. And so consistency and tone of voice is really, really important. Then what are you going to talk about? Probably lots of people today may talk about kind of always-on marketing and moving from kind of campaign cycles to having a consistent presence, a consistent relationship. And content calendars, and kind of suddenly you have this big vacuum that you have to fill, and you have to like have something to talk about. You don't have to talk all the time, but it's great to kind of have something to kind of fill those kind of interactions over time. And so Red Bull, I think, do a fantastic job of this. They have kind of shifted their approach to marketing to being more like that of a publisher, where they have this wealth of content, of stuff they can talk about that's kind of relevant to the brand proposition and the overall purpose, but it gives them fodder, it gives them license to kind of keep the engagement really high, whether that's through extreme sports, whether that's through Flute Tag, whether that's through F1, whatever it might be. So we need to think about what it is we want to say, what's the purpose, how we're going to talk about it, and then what it is we're actually going to talk about. Oreo is another nice example. You may well have seen this. They did 100 Days of Oreo, where they gave commentary, short, pithy commentary on the world's events through their product. So you compare this to lots of brands that just put a packaging shot on and say, buy our product. This is actually creating relevancy, meaning, using their product still, but in a really smart, sophisticated way. And again, if you think about how people are using Facebook, how people are scrolling through their newsfeed, it's contextual to the world around them and what's happening. So suddenly Oreo have a piece of content that's smart, it's clever, it makes you stop, makes you kind of consider it, but it's in the context of what else is going on in the world around. We see kind of Facebook and newsfeed as a conduit to popular culture, and so how can brands react and be part of that popular culture in a kind of clever way? The shift, I don't think I've got a slide here, but the shift we're seeing lots of marketeers take is to creating almost like newsrooms in-house or through their agencies. So setting themselves up to be organized, to respond and turn around fast turnaround content. So having copy desks, having editorial boards who have the permission to react to what people are saying, react to current events, and turn content out quite quickly. And it takes quite a different approach, we'll talk about in a second, to marketing than traditional campaign cycles where you do brand planning years in advance and everything has to be signed off by 12 steps of legal, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't allow you, the marketing function isn't set up to act in this way yet, in most examples, but we're changing that. So why would anyone care? Why would they share? This is a kind of a question or a mantra we ask all the time. For every single piece of content you put out there, what right do you have to be in someone's newsfeed? And why would they care so much that they'll interact with that and that will be shared with their friends and that will form either the connection they have with their friends or form part of their identity? It's a really tough question to ask, but again, is the kind of key to success on the platform. So to answer that question, we need to kind of really understand what motivates people. and why people connect with each other on the platform to begin with. So why do we connect with each other? Why do people actually use Facebook? There's a lot of work that goes into behind all this. This is just a couple of kind of snippets, as I'm probably running over on time already. So we talk with each other, and by talk I mean like, comment, share, whatever it might be, to build relationships with the people who are closest to us in our world. We talk to craft our identity. So I might like certain brands because I want that to say something about me and who I am in the world. And we talk to make life easier, whether that's to help someone out or to help ourselves. There's often a kind of, at the bottom of this, a core fundamental social motivation for me to do anything on Facebook. How do we actually behave? How do we talk? We talk about what's going on around us, like the Oreo example. We talk about other people. Not surprisingly, a lot of the content that is kind of talked about on Facebook is about other people, and gossip is quite a strong social function in society. And we talk about feelings, not facts. It's OMG, it's, what are the other ones? WTF? I'm not so down with the kids as I should be. But that's how people talk, that's how people consume. We know on average, people use 11 words in a post on Facebook, whereas brands use 16 words in a post. So brands are talking very verbose, very long-winded marketing speak a lot of the time. So we don't necessarily want to kind of pretend that we're down with the kids, but we kind of need to have our own tone, our own voice that's authentic to us, but is in the same context, the same kind of vernacular, if you will, as how people are using the site. So, how should your business meet the demands of all this? Like I said, a lot of the stuff is the same as before in terms of building brand equity, but a lot of things are different in terms of how we execute against that. So what I thought I would do, just to wrap up, is talk briefly about kind of how we approach work at Facebook, and how you might kind of take some of the values that we hold really dear to how you approach marketing and how you approach kind of what you guys do. Around our office, there's lots of posters, and we have lots of kind of mantras or values that we kind of hold quite dear. I'll talk about a couple of them and how that drives how we approach doing pretty much anything and everything, and how you might want to kind of apply some of that to marketing, perhaps, maybe. First one is move fast and break things. I love the size of that. It's like some political movement. This is basically the fact that we don't know the answers. We're kind of figuring all this stuff out as we go along. And any kind of guru who comes up here and says they know the answers is completely full of rubbish. But the quicker you can get something out into the market, the quicker you can kind of test and see what works and what doesn't work, the quicker then you can react to it and you can move in the right direction based on data. So that's how we run the site effectively. So we're getting better at producing kind of market-ready products when we launch, but we're not Apple. So things go to market, we see how over 1 billion people are using them, and then we tweak and we adjust and we change and we move. And so that is quite different to how the whole marketing profession has been operating kind of to this point. Having worked for brands and at agencies and all the rest of it beforehand, I know how campaign cycles work. I know how ideas are sold and they're bought, and how then they're sold and bought internally, and how everything has to be, oh, have I just killed the presentation? Yay. And how so much pressure is on everything being right. Kind of the moment it leaves the door, it has to be a kind of knock out the park success. And the reality is most campaigns aren't, yet then we kind of post-rationalize all the numbers to make them look really successful because everyone's asses are on the line. Culturally, we approach things where we're encouraged to kind of take risks and kind of, we say it's okay to give up on something good in the quest for something great. And you only know that if you kind of are empowered to kind of move quite quickly. Done is better than perfect. So again, this is kind of the same point, kind of re-articulated. The best example is when we launched our Photos product to the world a year or two ago. We launched photos sharing on Facebook, You may have heard this story before, it gets repeated quite a bit, but it was by far, it wasn't a very good photos product, to be honest. You had sites like Flickr, Picasa, all these sites where you could upload high-res images, you could crop it, you could reduce red eye, you could add filters, da-da-da-da-da. We came along with a pretty rubbishy photo sharing function where you couldn't do any of those things. You couldn't put high-res images up, you couldn't crop it, you couldn't reduce red eye. It was pretty weak, but it had one point of difference, and that was the ability to tag your friends in it. And that one point of difference has kind of transformed photo sharing online to now the point where it's somewhere like the entire catalogue of Flickr gets uploaded to Facebook every 4 or 5 days. And it's kind of our ability to recognize what works, what doesn't work, and double down on it really, really quickly that kind of is what drives how we approach innovation. And so if we had waited to craft the most perfect photo sharing product in the world, we'd have kind of probably missed the opportunity, which was actually tagging your friends as the key thing we should really focus on. And the rest we'll get better at over a period of time. Fail harder. Again, we believe that kind of making mistakes is good and is better than missing opportunities. But again, it runs really counter to how marketing works and how marketing functions work, where failure is not an option. And we believe that, and we're encouraged to kind of make mistakes as we go. The trick is spotting them really quickly and moving in the other direction really quickly. And so again, I would think about how you might be able to take some of these approaches to how you act on Facebook, how you behave on Facebook. If you're doing all the things we talked about before, if your purpose is there, if you've got your tone of voice down, if you're authentic and you're connecting with people in a really true way, then experiment, play, have fun, kind of make some mistakes, learn from them quickly, learn what responds to your customers and your audience, and then move really quickly to make sure you kind of are working on what works rather than what doesn't work. And then finally, again, this is something we just kind of ask ourselves constantly is, what would we do if we weren't afraid? And that can mean anything. We determine our own future. We kind of love what we do. And there is no rule book. It isn't a sausage factory. We're kind of writing the rules as we go along. And I would kind of empower all of you to kind of see this as an opportunity. Like suddenly the landscape has changed. The ability for brands to have a real connection with their customers has fundamentally changed. And for that to then use brands to help connect other people and what that means is really exciting. So if you're into it, embrace it. Try stuff, kind of get involved, roll up your sleeves, and figure it out and kind of write the rule book as you go along. That's me, done.
So we're going to open the floor to 5 minutes of questions. I'm sure we've got lots after that fascinating session. So we've got a couple of guys around the room with mics. So just pop your hand up. Can I ask that when you ask a question, you give us your name and the organisation that you're from, please? Who's first? Just at the front.
Hi, just a quick question. In your presentation, when you started with Nike, you said that they continue the same messaging across all their media. And then later on when you were talking about the cookies, you said that actually they have specific advertising on Facebook because they're trying to talk about other current trends.
Yeah.
So just sort of explain that to me.
Sure. So for Nike, it's that their purpose is consistent. They may bring their purpose to life through lots of different ways, lots of different means. So their purpose is to inspire athletes to be better. Oreo's purpose is something around, I'll get it wrong if I try and remember it, but it's kind of why they're on Facebook remains the same, but Nike can use Nike Plus, they can use events, all these different things, they're posting, they're advertising. There are lots of different ways to execute, but it all adds up to that overarching kind of their North Star, if you will. And it's kind of understanding that. So Oreo have a North Star, but the way they execute against it is just different. Does that make sense? It's kind of...
Yeah, they've got different strategies, but the way they use Facebook.
But yeah, exactly. Their overarching objective is kind of consistent, but then they can execute and deliver against that objective in a number of different ways.
Thanks for that question. Can I have another question, please? And again, name and company when you ask a question would be fantastic. Who's next?
Hi, I'm Nicole from Jägermeister UK. Quick question for you, really. I was reading an article about Kik and WhatsApp kind of apps, sort of the youth market sort of moving more to that because mum's on Facebook. How does like Facebook kind of handle that? Because obviously it's huge, but obviously there's a trend where some of them are actually moving away now slightly.
Messaging is huge and is really important. And we're seeing lots of, again, different things coming up, and we're kind of absolutely focused on making our messaging as compelling as possible. So I don't know if you've seen Facebook Home we launched recently, which has chat heads, which allows you to, from SMS or from Facebook messaging, engage on top of whatever app it is you're currently in. We're focused on innovation like that, which allows kind of, it's, again, just trying to make better products that people want to use, because absolutely there's chat and messaging is absolutely huge, and there's loads of innovation happening in that space. We're trying to innovate hard and fast as well in the space.
Thank you. We have one more question.
Sorry, this? Okay. Good morning. My name is Funke from FB Initiatives, Lagos, Nigeria. I'm really excited to be here this morning, second time. I was here a couple of years ago. And I have a similar question. I think I asked something like this 2 years ago. It's, I don't know if it's appropriate for you, Alistair, but it's to do with global reach and global, what are the differences, if any, if you know, between what's happening in this part of the world as far as Facebook goes and what's happening out in the rest of the world?
I guess the best way to answer that is a lot of it is driven currently by the type of device that is in the market. And so this is kind of really core to the future and the vision of our company. We launch lots of products that are great on smartphones, but we also kind of have versions of the site that kind of degrade all the way down to what you can use on feature phone, what you can use on the most basic phone, what you can use Facebook just by doing SMS, if that's the only kind of access you have. So we're really focused on connectivity in places like Africa, and kind of how we see the next few years, the majority of the population coming online through their phones, and not necessarily through smartphones yet, but in a couple of years, the vast majority, I think there's the report which says kind of at the moment 1 billion people are kind of connected online. No, that's not right. There's 6 billion people who are going to come online for the first time via their phones and will have no understanding of the laptop or the web or whatever. So how we can design and help connect all those people through their mobile phones, and how we can help them access data in an affordable way is really, really important. So we're really focused on that. So at one end of the spectrum, you've got this amazing kind of Facebook Home and all the stuff we're doing kind of on Android and iOS. The other end of the spectrum, we're really focused on how we can kind of make experiences that are really rich and valuable, but a really low data threshold. So we can help connect people across the world and kind of hit our next 2 billion people. Because that's really exciting. If you can do that, what the opportunity is once we kind of really connect the planet to create real change for good in the world. Don't know if that quite answers your question, but it's how we view kind of the opportunity.